From the silent confines of the Ethiopian mountains to the narrow alleys of Jerusalem, a prophecy is taking shape before the eyes of a generation that, for the most part, has not yet awakened to what is truly happening. This is not about mere immigration, nor is it a geopolitical coincidence. What is in motion is one of the forgotten threads of the great prophetic tapestry that God has woven through the centuries. A dark, resilient thread hidden in the folds of history, the thread of the Beta Israel, the Ethiopian Jews. They are like echoes of an ancient promise, voices that have crossed deserts, persecutions, silence, and isolation, carrying in their hands the same Torah given to Moses, not through rabbinic transmission, but through sacred and direct inheritance. Have you heard of them? Have you ever wondered how it is possible that a people, isolated for centuries in the heart of Africa, preserved biblical feasts, Mosaic rituals, and messianic hopes without ever having access to the Talmud or the traditions of European Judaism? This story is a living reminder that God does not need the permission of religious institutions to fulfill his will. He is not confined to the spiritual capitals of the world. He hides treasures where no one else looks and reveals them at the appointed time. And that time has come. The history of the Beta Israel does not begin in modern history books, but in ancient scrolls and the prophetic promises recorded in Isaiah, Zephaniah, and the Psalms. Their steps of return to Jerusalem are not merely physical journeys, they are seals broken, the word being fulfilled. Isaiah 11, Zephaniah 3, Psalm 68, all point to what is happening now before our eyes. They are returning, and this changes everything. If you sense that something momentous is unfolding behind the scenes of history, if you feel there is an invisible movement guiding seemingly disconnected events toward a prophetic culmination, then this video is for you. We will take you through the hidden paths of history, the mountains of Gondar, the pages of the Kebra Nagast, the forgotten verses of the prophets, and even the behind-the-scenes of the secret operations that brought thousands of Ethiopian Jews to Israel. Prepare to understand why this silent people is, in fact, one of the keys to the end times. Before we dive into this journey, we want to extend an invitation. If you love content like this, which connects the Bible, history, and prophecy, subscribe to our channel now. Every week, we post videos that awaken faith, expand understanding, and reveal the spiritual behind the scenes of what is happening in the world. Click subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any content. Now let's go together. They walk in silence. Many of them left behind homes, communities, graves, and stories that will never be told. They carry simple bags on their backs, and in their eyes, a hope that few comprehend. They are called Beta Israel, but for a long time, they were called Falashas, an Amharic term meaning exiles or foreigners. And indeed, that is how they lived, as foreigners in their own land. Marginalized in Ethiopia for centuries, persecuted by both Orthodox Christians and Muslims, accused of witchcraft, excluded from official records, and yet they endured, dressed in white, observing the Sabbath, singing psalms in Ge'ez, an ancient Semitic language that dates back to the times of the first Ethiopian Christians and the ancient Jewish liturgy of the region. They did not know modern Hebrew. They had no knowledge of the Talmud. They had never heard of Maimonides. But they knew the Ten Commandments by heart. They kept the dietary laws of Leviticus. And every year, amidst the poverty of their villages, they celebrated Passover with bitter herbs, unleavened bread, and the reading of the liberation from Egypt. How is this possible? The most widespread explanation among them comes from the Kebra Nagast, a sacred Ethiopian book that blends history and legend, claiming that it all began with the visit of the Queen of Sheba to King Solomon. According to this tradition, Makeda, the Queen of Ethiopia, was impressed by Solomon's wisdom and bore him a son, Menelik III. This boy is said to have grown up in Jerusalem, learned the Torah, and upon reaching adulthood, returned to Ethiopia with a group of Levites, priests, and chosen Israelites. They brought with them a copy of the Torah, and perhaps, according to popular belief, even the Ark of the Covenant. Although this narrative is not historically confirmed, It shaped the identity of the Beta Israel for centuries, and more important than the literal truth of the account is its spiritual power. For this people, it is not just about genealogical origin, but about divine purpose. They saw, and still see, themselves as direct heirs of God's covenant with Israel. Isolated from the major centers of Judaism, they created a unique, pure, and archaic way of living the Mosaic faith. A Judaism without rabbis, a Levitical priesthood that never heard of Hillel or Shammai, a people who kept the law without ever reading a Talmudic treatise. This singularity led many European rabbis to reject their authenticity. For a long time, the Beta Israel were treated as imposters or second-class converts. But something began to change in the 20th century. With the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 and the law of return, which guaranteed every Jew the right to live in Israel, an uncomfortable question arose: would the Beta Israel be included? At first, the response was hesitant. But after decades of pressure and study, in 1973, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, one of the greatest authorities of Sephardic Judaism, officially recognized the Beta Israel as legitimate descendants of the tribe of Dan, one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. This recognition was decisive. In 1984, Israel launched Operation Moses, a secret mission that rescued over 8,000 Ethiopian Jews from refugee camps in Sudan. Israeli Air Force planes with US support flew in the dead of night, removing seats to accommodate as many people as possible. Women gave birth on the flights. Children cried as their parents sang psalms of deliverance. It was like a new exodus, not from Egypt, but from Ethiopia. But that was just the beginning. In 1991, with Ethiopia's communist regime on the brink of collapse and the risk of genocide looming over the Ethiopian Jews, Israel launched Operation Solomon. In just 36 hours, 34 planes completed 41 consecutive flights, transporting around 1,400 to 500 Beta Israel from the capital, Addis Ababa, to Tel Aviv. The plane seats were removed. People sat on the floor in silence with tearful eyes and psalms on their lips. It was the largest air evacuation in history in such a short time. Children who had never seen the sea saw the lights of a new hope for the first time. And the world, once again, did not understand what it was witnessing. To the media, it was a humanitarian operation. To the heavens, it was prophetic fulfillment. In Zephaniah chapter 3 verse 10, the prophet declares, "From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my worshippers, my scattered people, will bring me offerings." This scattered people, isolated by the mountains, hidden in the forgotten villages of Gondar, was returning to present their lives as living offerings. They brought no gold. They brought no scrolls. They brought what God values most: faithfulness without an audience, obedience without recognition, worship without a stage. Many of those who came did not even speak Hebrew. They arrived in Israel as strangers among their own. They faced discrimination. They were called black, primitive, impure. Some were forced into symbolic conversions. Others spent years separated from their families, trapped in the borders of bureaucracy. But even this did not stop them, because there is a force that moves those who believe in the promise. And that force does not come from religious institutions. It comes from heaven. The story of Pnina Tamano-Shata is one such testimony. Born in Ethiopia, she was brought to Israel as a child during Operation Moses. She grew up in marginalized neighborhoods, faced prejudice, studied journalism, and later law. Years later, she became the first Ethiopian woman elected to the Knesset, Israel's parliament, and in 2020 she assumed the role of Minister of Immigration and Absorption. A daughter of the African desert, now opening doors so that more of her people can arrive in Jerusalem. This is not politics. This is prophecy in flesh and blood. Isaiah chapter 11 verse 11 echoes louder than ever. In that day the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the remnant of his people from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush, Ethiopia, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. Notice the expression, reach out his hand a second time. The original Hebrew text uses a verb that indicates a second divine action, a new redemptive act, a new exodus. And there, among the listed nations, is Cush, ancient Ethiopia. Isaiah did not write by chance. Every word carried a heavenly intention. But why Ethiopia? Why would God hide a people in such a remote region, so far off the radar of Israel's central history? The answer may lie precisely in that hiding. God has always hidden remnants where the world does not look. Joseph was hidden in Egypt. Moses was concealed in Pharaoh's palace. Elijah was fed by ravens. And Jesus, as a newborn, was taken to Egypt to be protected from Herod's fury. God uses deserts, exiles, and the forgotten as places of preservation. The Beta Israel are part of this pattern. While rabbinic debates grew in Babylon, while Judaism took Talmudic and philosophical turns in Europe and North Africa, the Ethiopian Jews maintained a rudimentary, liturgical, literal faith based solely on the Torah. They knew nothing of the schools of Hillel or Shammai. They had never heard of Rashi or Maimonides, but they kept the Sabbath. They observed the laws of purity. They practiced animal sacrifices. They honored the priests of the lineage of Levi, the Kesim, men who received no formal training, but were recognized for their consecration and reverence. Theologian Edward Ullendorf, a pioneer in studies of Ethiopian Jews, stated, "The Judaism of the Beta Israel gives us a window into what religious practice might have been like before the destruction of the Second Temple. This is because they kept alive a form of worship so ancient and disconnected from rabbinic traditions that they seem to have been frozen in time, as if God had preserved them in a spiritual bubble, apart from the doctrinal and political conflicts that fragmented the Jewish people over the centuries. But even with the recognition of the State of Israel and the mass rescues, not all Beta Israel have been able to return. It is estimated that today, between 7,000 and 12,000 still live in waiting camps in the cities of Gondar and Addis Ababa, awaiting official authorization to make Aliyah, the migration to Israel. Many of them have relatives already in Jerusalem, with whom they speak through video calls, send letters and photos. But reunification remains a promise. And even so, every Sabbath, they gather, dress in white, light candles, recite psalms, and pray, facing Zion. And here lies the mystery of Psalm 68, verse 31. Ethiopia will hasten to stretch out her hands to God. David does not speak symbolically. He describes a literal gesture, hands raised, an entire people moved by spiritual longing. Ethiopia, that dark and forgotten land in the ancient biblical imagination, now being called to worship. And not just any worship, a voluntary, eager, hurried worship. The Hebrew verb taritz, translated as hasten, suggests zeal, deep desire, holy urgency. And what we are seeing in the streets of Jerusalem is exactly this. Dark hands raised at the temple walls, young Ethiopians praying in Hebrew, black-skinned children learning the blessings of Deuteronomy, women dancing in the courtyards of the old city saying, "We have returned." Not with weapons, not with gold, but with faith. And that is the most precious offering. In the book of Acts, chapter 8, we find a story that at first glance seems isolated. An Ethiopian official, a eunuch, treasurer of Queen Candace, returns from Jerusalem reading the prophet Isaiah. He does not understand the text. God then sends Philip, who explains that Isaiah was speaking of the suffering Messiah. The eunuch believes, requests baptism, and continues on his way filled with joy. Many scholars believe this man was part of the already existing Ethiopian Jewish community at the time. And if this is true, and all indications suggest it is, then this scene is not merely the conversion of an individual. It is the visible beginning of an invisible harvest that God had been preparing for centuries. The Bible mentions Ethiopia in Isaiah, Zephaniah, the Psalms, and Acts. And this is no coincidence. It is a guiding thread, a sign that there is a lineage, a heritage, a mission hidden in this people. They are part of the eschatological clock, a thermometer of the end times. Because according to Scripture, before the Messiah returns, the children of Israel must be back in their land. and the Beta Israel are part of this gathering. They are a trumpet sounding in silence, a reminder that time is running out. And if God is bringing back the forgotten, the hidden, the exiled, then he is also preparing the return of the King. The Beta Israel are more than immigrants. They are prophetic sentinels. If Ethiopia has already answered the call and Israel is being gathered, then only one question remains. And you, this is the time to awaken, to align your heart with heaven. Subscribe to the channel, share this message, and remember, the God who keeps promises does not fail. He is coming, and when he comes, will he find faith? Because the prophetic clock does not stop, and it is getting closer.